Hey, thanks for tuning in. In this video, we're going to talk about 4 objections to wearing tassels, to wearing the Tzitzit on our garments. Now, the tassels are indeed commanded in Numbers 15:37 through 41, and also Deuteronomy 22:12. We are to have Tzitzit on our garments. However, a lot of people don't want to do it. And these objections to not doing it go beyond just arguing about meaning of the text or things like that. They go into other issues as well. We're going to talk about 4 of them. One issue that comes up is, I don't think God cares about that. And this is kind of an interesting one, and it kind of gets into bringing our past beliefs into our current or new belief system. When we look at what the law says, very clearly it says that this is required, this is a commandment from God. Especially look at Numbers 15:37 through 41. It is very clear that God has indeed commanded this. That being said, it might seem odd to us because we're bringing in past beliefs about God or the nature of God or the nature of what God cares about. However, once we begin to recognize what the Torah says, once we begin to change our mindset about the law and about what God cares about, once we change it to recognizing the text of the commands, we can see very clearly that indeed He does care about it. Indeed, He has commanded us to put them on our garments. The second point I want to talk about is the argument that they look stupid. Now, everyone has their own personal opinions on appearances and aesthetics and fashion and all of that. And also, the culture that we live in has its opinions on those things as well. And there are trends and fashion trends and all of that. And people have a certain idea of how people should look. And there's a certain expectation of how people should look. That being said, since it is indeed commanded, we need to consider how can we work within the command to do it in a way that we're okay with doing it. So consider that many of the appearances of tassels that we are used to, the commonly worn ones, oftentimes are not based strictly upon the text. They're based upon other traditions and other ideas of how they should look. If we look at what is said in Numbers 15:37 through 41 and Deuteronomy 22:12, we can see it doesn't tell us specific numbers of knots. It doesn't give us an exact number of strands that we're supposed to use and that sort of thing. It doesn't tell us to use white, and it doesn't tell us to use like certain types of tying or anything like that. And it doesn't tell us it has to be a certain length or size. So if you're concerned about the appearance, begin to think about, well, how can I work within the commandments in order to do the command while still at least somewhat honoring my opinion of aesthetics or my opinion on fashion. You don't necessarily have to make them garish, or you don't necessarily have to make them so large that they draw unnecessary attention or anything like that. They just need to be there. They need to be on our garments, and they need to be according to the commands. And see how you can work with that to appeal to your sense of appearance and all of that, while still obeying what God has asked. The third objection I'm going to talk about is the issue of what others think. Others are going to potentially see us having these on our garments, and they're going to think whatever they think. They may think it's odd, they may just not understand it, or they may totally not notice. It surprised me how few people have said anything about them in the years that I've been observing. So it can be easy to think and project and think, oh, these people are going to think I'm crazy or something like that. Well, we need to keep in mind that the reason that we're doing this is because we are seeking to serve God. We are seeking to do as He has asked. Now, people might look down on us for any number of commands that we might do. For example, they might look down on us because we won't eat certain animals, or they might look down on us because we do eat certain animals. Also, they might think that not working on the Sabbath is dumb or something like that, or they might think that observing these non-traditional holidays is weird or something like that. But is that really the issue? Is that really what's important? And once again, you don't have to make them garish, or you don't have to make them just so obvious that no one can get by you without seeing them kind of thing. But they do need to fall within the commands, and we do want to be serving God in the way as He has asked. So that being said, a lot of people aren't going to be concerned about it at all. So it's probably not as important as we were thinking in terms of what others may think of us. In my experience, it seems like people overestimate the amount of thought that other people give them. That a lot of people are never going to see them, or if they do, they might think about them for a few seconds and that's it. So it's probably not as big of an issue as you may have thought. The fourth objection that I'm going to talk about is the idea that, but other people wear tassels and I disagree with them. And so trying to maintain a distinct appearance from these other people that we disagree with. Now, this is kind of an interesting one, and yeah, there are a lot of different groups that draw upon the Torah, observe it in part, or try to observe all of it, or that sort of thing, and there are disagreements naturally as a result. Now, it's kind of an interesting thing, though, because we might object to looking like this group because in our eyes, this group is not really observing all the commands, or they're not believing right, or they're not actually adhering to the commands in the way we think they should. And so we can look at that and we can say, well, we don't want to look like them. But what makes it interesting is that this is indeed a command. The tassels on our garments is a command. And so we want to differentiate ourselves from people we don't think are obeying correctly by not obeying. So how does that work? How does that work in our understanding of things? Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense in that light, at least in my opinion. So yes, I can understand wanting to differentiate ourselves from other groups that we disagree with, but differentiate yourselves in a way that's not violating the command. Are we going to stop observing the Sabbath because some people might not work on the seventh day of the week that we disagree with? Or are we going to start eating pork because there are other religious groups that don't eat it? So where does it end? Are we differentiating ourselves from non-observers by not observing, or are we going to differentiate ourselves in our observance in actually observing? So those are some objections that I've heard regarding not wearing the tassels, regarding not having the commanded tzitzit on our garments. It is an issue, it is a command that we indeed need to observe. It's a command that oftentimes gets just ignored in some way or another. However, we need to think about the specifics of it, and the specifics of what it is that people are opposed to, or that we might have been opposed to at one time, and how can we work with that consideration and actually do the command while recognizing objections that we may have had. Obviously, doing the command is what is important. It's what we need to give the heed to, the most heed to. And we also do need to recognize that there are objections people have, and they do need to be recognized and addressed in order for them to realize they do need to obey it, and they realize that there is a way they can do it that does satisfy them, at least in part. Because some of these commands that we may just not be inclined to do them normally. We may not just decide that we're going to do that just of our own desire. And that's not really the issue, because we decided that we wanted to observe what God wants for us. We decided to observe what He has asked us to do, not just the desires of our heart, not just our own personal inclinations. It's about what does serving God entail, what does He want from us. So let's think about that, and let's keep His law in mind as we go on. Thanks for watching. If you think this video might be useful to someone, feel free to share it. Also, feel free to like this video and to subscribe to this channel if you have not already. That way we can stay in touch and you can be informed about any new material that I'll be putting out, and so that we can continue this discussion. Thanks for watching the video. Remember the commands. Peace.